YouTube Live. It is Sunday evening. I'm Kevin McPherson, your host. I hope you're enjoying your weekend. I mean, I say that knowing that there's part of it that I know that you didn't, but you probably had an eye on this top shelf 5-star basketball recruiting and how intense the visit situation's been here at Arkansas with John Calipari in terms of you had 3 visitors on 3 consecutive weekends, and then this week going from Wednesday, bridging through today. So a 4 or 5 day span where you had another 3 visitors in. So you got really busy really quickly. And now all of a sudden you've hosted 6 visitors in basically the last 6 weeks when you look at the final weekend of August when everything started off with Caleb Holt. But this weekend, the headliners were obviously here. You went midweek with Tay Kinney. Cal is seeing Torrey right now. Someone's telling me that Cal's already back on the road. Yes, Arkansas visits wrapped up early today. I think this says a lot. Someone making a comment here that I guess someone's tracking planes or has knowledge that Calipari is out to see Abdou Toure, who just visited Arkansas just a week ago. So effectively, you've had 4 visitors in the last week. If you want to look at Toure's visit wrapping up last Sunday, 3 starting Wednesday, 4 including last weekend, and it also says a lot about if Calipari is making that stop. We know Chuck Martin has been out to see Abdou Toure. Calipari, this will be the first since the live recruiting period opened back up on September 3rd. So thank you for the comment. Thank you for sharing that with me. We got a lot of really good feedback speaking directly with both players and their camps throughout this weekend. So I have the source information's coming directly with conversations with the visitors, as well as a parent and a guardian, parent for one, a guardian for the other. So we got a lot of information today for you for Jordan Smith Jr. and Fandion. Can't wait for our first game, October 27th. That's right around the corner. So thank you for some of the comments that are coming in. So visits wrapped up today. Once again, the Tay Kinney visit, the last time we were on, we kind of went through that. There was sort of this cautious optimism about the visit coming from Arkansas side of things. Kansas, the perceived leader, Arkansas moving up the visit date because he's going to announce September 28th, which is a Sunday, which is a week from today. And that was to be the end of his Arkansas visit. So if you're thinking that Arkansas was maybe in the lead with all the attention from Calipari and the long-term relationship, well, then why not just keep that visit date if you're going to be the school that's announced later in the day that your visit concludes? The fact that you moved it up probably does indicate that you're making up ground or trying to against a school like Kansas where all the betting money's been in terms of national recruiting analysts and their opinions. And we've talked all about that. So that's how you started your midweek. Again, Abdou Toure a week ago. And so now you come into this weekend starting Friday, you had both players coming in and they're starting to keep tabs with me, let me know when they got there, what they're already doing. We put tweets out. I had tweets out on Friday. Deanna arrived at campus first. He got there in the morning. He was touring facilities with a scheduled practice time of 2:30 to attend Arkansas men's basketball practice at the Performance Center. But Jordan Smith Jr. got in a little bit later than maybe expected. He got in, I think, between 2 and 2:30, and when they were just approaching the practice facility, Calipari, I think Chen Coleman was accompanying he and his family. And so if the practice got started right at 2:30 or a little bit later, they did attend, both players attended both practices. They attended 2 practices. I was able to confirm that through the weekend. It's a theme. Every player that's been on campus at this point in this recruiting cycle, now up to 6, have attended at least 2 basketball practices. In the past, sometimes you can only get in for 1. So I think 2 is better. I don't think there's a negative there. I think it's positive. So that was the case. So the first one of those would have been on Friday. Then Jordan Smith Jr.'s dad sent me a photo of JSJ on Friday waiting near the camera shoot setup where he was already wearing hog gear. And I think he was waiting for the photographer, whatever they were going to do, because he was sitting down, kind of scrolling through his phone. And this photo that I tweeted out was a really cool photo. So again, I was starting to get content throughout the weekend. Fandion was sending me photos from his photo shoot and giving me little updates in mid-visit, things going extremely well, stuff like that, sending me DMs. So I had stuff coming in, but I did not tweet out the photos that he sent me because I was told, both players on Sunday do plan to put out on their IG accounts, on their Twitter accounts, which they did, the photos from their photo shoot. So I just kind of let them do that. and held on to what was sent to me earlier, prior to some of that stuff getting out. But I did retweet what they put out, and another one that was sent to me. A lot of it's kind of the same stuff, but it's really cool. And there was a photo that Calipari took with both players, one on each side, and they were holding the national championship banner for Arkansas from the 93-94 season. So I thought that was probably my favorite photo, because you had both players with Calipari who were on the visit, and you had that banner. So it was a little unique, not something that we've seen yet. So I thought that was really cool. So let's jump into some of the things. Again, dinner's out. Calipari likes to go over, his sales pitch, if you want to call it that. His courtship presence is all about dining, going out and having those meals, because you're going to eat, right? You're going to go out and take them out to eat, but doing business, conducting business, make it less stuffy. Those dining scenarios where you're kind of going through some of the vision you have for players. But both players also got to go to Top Golf. And that was confirmed with me. It was assistant coach Chuck Martin, Tyler Eulis, who's on the basketball staff, longtime Cal guy when he played for him at Kentucky, as well as Jalen Williams Pro Hog. Now, we were talking on the last episode about Jalen Williams was in town, that we expected there to be some kind of interaction there. Well, part of that was at Top Golf in that event, and both players were there. So Fandion and Jordan Smith Jr. attended, or that was part of their visit and part of their itinerary. But Jay Will was in the mix, in addition, again, to assistant coach Chuck Martin and Tyler Eulis. So that was one of the things that they did over the weekend. So let's start getting down to what players told me. So I had a phone conversation with Jordan Smith Jr. So we had an interview, but it was phone, so I'm hearing his voice. This one wasn't done over DM or text. Sometimes you do it that way. Sometimes you do them in person. This was over the phone. And he really, really sounded positive about this visit. He told me it was fun. He really enjoyed it. And he said it was an eye-opener. He told me those were the words he used. So it was his first time in Arkansas. And that it raised his expectations of what it would be for him to be in Arkansas as a player and part of this program and representing the state. It raised his expectations of how, in a positive way, of what that might look like. So it was a really good visit for him. He went into the fact that I asked him, what is Calipari's vision for you? What is he telling you? And he said that he could come in and impact right away as a freshman. Well, these level players, top 5 rated 5 stars, he's the top 5 player, number 2 by some services, 3 in others, in the class of 2026. I've said he's the best two-way player in the country. We saw how important he was as a starter. The youngest starter on his class in terms of classification on Team USA Junior National FIBA U19 gold medal run back in the summer. The big numbers he put up on Nike EYBL, a lot of them offensive numbers, but really this is the best two-way player because of his defense. I think he's arguably the best defender, period, in any class, regardless of classification. The best two-way player, that goes hand in hand with that. But Calipari telling him that he could come in and impact as a freshman is a huge statement, because it reflects exactly what we would have been saying would be the case. We've said, J.J. Andrews, the same thing, best two-way player at his position, plays winning basketball. You just need these kind of guys on the court as much as possible. Hard to take them off of it because how they impact winning. And so that was part of the vision that was shared with him. That was the first thing he told me that Calipari said. He said that they want him to be a decision maker, playing through him as a lead ball handler. So a role for him as a decision maker, whether that's facilitating, looking for his own shot, whatever that means, as a decision maker on the ball, as well as a role off the ball. What have we been saying that's been coming back, feedback from these different players and their camps, their families, intel that I continue to get after every visit about what stood out the most is Calipari and his staff's vision for each player and how they can show them the previous track record of getting guys to the NBA and all the success with second and third contracts and their development and their big stage exposures while they're the 1 year in college. Hopefully they'll be a one and done. All that's been great, but it's the specifics tailored to each player to add value to them positionally so that they're not, maybe they're pigeonholed right now as a combo guard, which is one or two, and that's what they're talking about here. Or maybe it's just one or the other, or shooting guard, whatever. They're showing them more value to how they can help them elevate parts of their games that add more versatility to be multi-positional. Some people call it positionless. I don't know about that for most players. Some players, you could maybe make that case. But I think in this instance, it's what he's telling me is in step with everything I've been hearing about the previous visits, talking about using him in multiple ways. Because everybody understands how good he is defensively. Part of his maturation is on the offensive side, because they always say what the positions you can guard or the positions you can play. But I think as a lead guard, it's more than you being able to defend other lead guards. I really think it's learning how to play the nuances of playing with pace or some kind of pace, and getting the ball on time and on target, other things, and understanding when to go get yours and when to set up teammates and finding a balance. It's what Darius Acuff Jr. has been getting better and better at in practice. We're going to wrap up with practice stuff, by the way, at the end of this, because I've got some new intel coming out of the Performance Center about who's standing out, and then we've got some other stuff to talk about as we get closer to the exhibition part of the season. But really good stuff, and this feedback I got from Jordan Smith Jr. I asked him, I said, well, what were your takeaways from practice? What is it about Arkansas that right now is attractive to you? And he says, I like the playing style. It reminds him of the way they play at his high school, he told me. John Paul VI, which has been a kind of a feeder program for Duke. Duke's been the perceived leader by many and probably most for a while. Arkansas up there, top two discussion. Georgetown lurking. Kentucky visit coming up next month. But he really likes the playing style. It reminds him of his high school team. And he says they play fast. It's a scrappy way to play. He likes that because this is a guy, again, he's a defensive menace. He likes to get into folks. He wants to see that, that physicality, athleticism, plugging all that stuff in and playing like that. And he said he liked the way that the team gets up and down the court, and effectively playing at both ends. He really liked everything he saw from practice. So these are a lot of the positives. Again, talking about the top golf event, being able to attend the practices, some of the other stuff and interactions with players and team. We mentioned before, I think the last time we were on, his dad told me that he will take an unofficial visit. So once we get through the early period, the plan is for him is to wait and sign in the spring and make a decision much later. And part of that was the dad telling him, and we said on the last segment, was that he's already got an unofficial visit lined up to attend the Duke-Florida game. That'd be a home game for Duke in the ACC-SEC Challenge. I think the date for that game is December 2nd. Well, we know Arkansas a day later hosts Louisville for the same ACC-SEC Challenge at Bud Walton Arena. So I circled back to, well, have you set up a specific plan to return to Arkansas? So they haven't gotten that far yet, but that's something that they're looking at and would like to do, is to get back for an unofficial visit to attend a game. Arkansas doesn't host a non-conference game that's a kind of a big time matchup where you'd like to showcase it and bring players in, other than Louisville. And again, the day before he'll be apparently at Duke. So, maybe it's a league game later, or maybe they figure something out during non-conference and just bring him in when you're playing one of the bye games, because everything else at Bud Walton Arena is a bye game outside of that Louisville game. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what develops. But based on everything he told me, he sounded excited about this visit. I genuinely heard that in his voice. He was pretty thorough in some of the descriptions with things, so it didn't feel like he was just, he went into some very specific things that I just shared with you that stood out to him. And so that's the player perspective on it. Let's jump to Air Fandion and what he told me. Now, this was done through text and DM, two different versions of basically not hearing his voice. He does speak 6 languages. Some of the stuff, with English is sometimes so. We didn't get on the phone together because of his travel constraints today. But, he's actually, I think, getting home a little later, as it turns out, than Jordan Smith Jr. did, arrived sooner. But we did get some DM and text exchange both. And some of that started mid-visit when he was saying things were going extremely well. He really talked about being impressed with Arkansas's facilities, Cal's record with getting players to the NBA, and then the money part of it with Cal in terms of how his players succeed at the highest levels in their contracts. Not only doing well as a player, but making that pay off in the long run. He talked about that stuff. I asked about interacting with, Jordan Smith Jr. These guys are there together. All that was good vibes. That he knew him previously. I had spent time playing, I guess, competing against him overseas, and that they thought that the family interactions were really good. Fandion, we talked about this. We broke this info when we first broke that his visit date had changed a second time for a third date of this weekend. So once we got there, it stayed there. That part of the reason was a scheduling conflict because one of his coaches on the Guinea junior national team, Coach Cass, had a travel conflict for the previous scheduled weekend, which would have been last weekend with the Abdu Torre as previously scheduled, and it flipped to this weekend that just played out so that Cass could be there. Well, I saw Cass in one or two of the photos that I saw, so that was how he wanted this visit to go down and what he wanted. Now, again, speaking of potential leaders, Houston is the one that his guardian, Alex Victor, who also was keeping me up to date through the weekend with text and when they, what they were doing and things like that, has told me directly, Alex Victor, that Houston is in the lead and that Arkansas is right there. I mean, I think Arkansas is probably next. And you've got a Kentucky visit that he just did. He's got visits as it's scheduled right now to Indiana, Virginia. I guess things can change and move any of those teams up. But I really feel like as it is now, it's Houston and Arkansas. And until I hear something different, I have to think Houston may be the leader there. But I'll say this, having given you feedback from both players now, I spent more time on what Smith told, or just Smith Jr. told me than I have Deanne. But at the end of the day, my feedback from Arkansas staff is a little bit mixed. Folks that are inside the building there, it's probably a stronger, more positive, enthusiastic scenario than what we got coming out of Tate Kenny. Not that Kenny was negative; there was more caution in the optimism. I think it's a little closer to some of the stuff we were hearing about Caleb Holt and Brandon McCoy Jr. Maybe not quite as enthusiastic about Holt, but close. Pretty close. I think Arkansas feels good about where they sit with both of these. Not that I would frame this that the feeling is that they're in the lead for either one of them or that they have a silent commitment or a private commitment. Not quite there, but that if they weren't in first coming into the weekend or close to it, that they've improved their standing. The NIL offers are strong. They were in a position to do that. Part of that was backing away from the Tyron Stokes situation. We've talked about that with other players as well when those visits happened. Caleb Holt being able to offer more. So Arkansas has been in a strong position NIL-wise with both of these players, and that continued to be true in terms of the feedback post-visit. So here's where I see this right now. I think Arkansas has put itself in a position to win either or both of these recruitments without giving a full-throated statement that Arkansas is in the lead right now. We said that with Caleb Holt, that if he had to commit coming off that visit, it would be Arkansas. I'm not quite there with this, but I think Arkansas improved its situation in what were already two very close races. If you perceive what many do for Duke, for Jordan Smith Jr., Houston for Fandion, Arkansas made up ground. And it's too soon for me to know, was it enough to push ahead or pull itself even? I don't know that I'm quite there to be able to say that specifically. But they're in a better, improved shape from what looked already pretty darn good coming into these visits. That's how good these visits went. I'm told that most of the staff was very excited about where this went and where they stand now. This is as positive I've heard. Now, look, we're going to do a quick recap. We're almost 20 minutes in with the previous visitors. We said Holt, McCoy Jr., then it was Abdu Torre, and I kind of went through this the last time we were on a couple of days ago, but it's the same for me. Right now, Caleb Holt Jr., by the way, Caleb Holt, not Caleb Holt Jr. Caleb Holt visited Providence this weekend. We've been hearing for about a week that Providence is really trying to, shoehorn its way into this leaderboard here and may have a real chance to position NIL money in a way that would challenge other programs to either step up. In a lot of cases, you don't want to be in a situation where you're going too much all in on one guy when you're trying to spread the level a little bit like Calipari does and get multiple high-level guys. And so Providence may have a way to challenge what we think of the top contenders right now going into this weekend before the Providence visit for Holt. I saw it as Arkansas and Alabama. Kentucky visits also happen after Arkansas. I don't think right now Kentucky, unless it wants to shift a lot of NIL money, which it can do, and it's shown it will do, and in my opinion, will even overplay for players, which could change that dynamic. But for now, until I hear something like that, I feel like it's Arkansas and Alabama and maybe the home state school, as well as I heard that visit win and the increase in Alabama's NIL, not knowing did Arkansas budge anymore off a strong initial offer on the visit. Maybe a 1-2 scenario there, maybe Alabama, maybe the leader there. With Providence now, again, with this visit with Caleb Holt, I need to get more feedback on that to see has anything shifted to move Providence ahead of one or both of Arkansas and Alabama, because coming into it was just kind of that pecking order of those two for me coming into this weekend. Brandon McCoy Jr., I said it the last time we were on, I'm going to say it again. I'm told that Arkansas is the leader for now. He took a visit to Miami, official visit there. I saw some of the social media splash from that visit from him. So we'll see what comes out in the next few days. It's still going to be interesting to see for me who else Calipari goes to see. Again, is he trying to, if he's out to see Abdou Toure even as soon as this evening, does that, are we getting close to an announcement there, or is it just part of the process? Those are things that I need to learn more about. I almost wish I had dug a little bit more on that before I came on, but if I need to come on early in the morning with something that's significant there to follow up with, I will, or even later tonight if it's that urgent, like I know that there's a commitment and it's about to be announced publicly, we'll jump back on later today. But McCoy Jr., I think Arkansas is in the lead there for now. And this is another top 5 rated 5-star guard, 6'5". Both he and Caleb Holt, 6'5" guards. Both played with Jordan Smith Jr. on that FIBA U19 gold medal run. Holt, the best player on the Adidas circuit. McCoy Jr., for the longest time, rated the number 1 player in the class. Tyron Stokes displaced him. Depends on the service now. Because he did not play in the spring, and McCoy didn't really start emerging again until July, and Calipari prioritizing him being courtside for everything at Nike EYBL. He's anywhere. I think he might still be ranked 2nd or 3rd in one service. Some other ones having 5th or 6th, maybe 9th. But he's a top, in my opinion, when I look at it, I've got him ranked 5th in my class rankings that I did back in July. And I think, obviously he's a 5-star regardless and a top 10 player regardless. So this is why he remains a priority. There are people that have asked me, well, then if you're waiting for Jordan Smith Jr. to the spring, saw somewhere we're in a great spot with McCoy. That's what I'm saying now. Thank you for the comment. If you're thinking, well, if you have to wait till the spring and McCoy, and these are kind of combo guards, he and Brandon, or wait till the spring for Jordan Smith Jr., and both he and McCoy are kind of combo guards anyway, do you take the first one that's willing to commit to you? It could play out that way, but here's what I think. I think Arkansas is going to play the long game with Jordan Smith Jr. if it turns out to that. If they can convince him to decide early and do it for the early November period, great. Right now, the way it stands, based on what the dads told me, what the player just told me in this one-on-one interview, they're waiting to the spring. If something changes there, then it shifts things. But if you can get McCoy Jr. and get it done early, and you don't have to wait on him, Arkansas is going to do that. They're not going to not do that. That's going to happen. They've prioritized him. But I've said all along, you're going to take 3 or 4. You've already got J.J. Andrews on board, so 2 or 3 more. But that I have a source that is familiar with Calipari's thinking about putting this class together that has said if the dominoes fall the right way, that he might expand it to 5. And I could say, then it's not necessarily an either or. You could if you can get McCoy Jr. early and still wait on Jordan Smith Jr. until the spring, if that's how it plays out, you would still bring in Jordan Smith Jr. The other scenarios are, because you are counting J.J. Andrews in the mix, a top 5 rated 5-star wing in my rankings here out of Little Rock Christian Academy. You've obviously put a lot of attention on the front line with Fandion, Mika Murnin, who Arkansas is still pursuing. I repeat it every time we come on, the 6'10", top 10 rated 5-star. They just had a really nice run at Euro Cup after not playing spring and summer. Chase Foster, who I'm told they finalized a visit with the top 44-star 6'8" forward, who I think's a prototype SEC frontliner and could come in and help immediately. We'll see if the visit dates ever make the light of day. The Ratliff twins, both 7-footers, that Calipari's likely to be seeing tomorrow then. If he's out to see Abdou Toure tonight, and we knew that Calipari was trying to get out to see them this past week, but had to change his plans because of the Kenny going out to see Kenny in Cincinnati early in the week, and then moving up his visit to the middle of the week. Calipari then likely, since he's in that part of the country, tomorrow, bright and early, I'm guessing, will be out to see the Ratliff twins, because that's what I was expecting anyway. He'd go out early this week, but they're both 7-footers. So there's a lot of options. Baba Aladdin, that reclassed from 27 as the number one player, top 10 now, 5-star in the 2026. Tentative date for later in October to visit Arkansas. So you got a lot of frontline and backcourt options. Cole Clower still scheduled as Arkansas's next scheduled visitor. The way it is now, they don't have a visitor set up for when the football team comes back to Fayetteville to play Notre Dame. That might kind of be a good thing in a way. I don't know. I don't know what the vibes will be like on campus. Maybe not bad after folks have to digest what happened Saturday. And yeah, you've got a big name opponent that's ranked and just coming off a win in Notre Dame. And, it's just an historic opportunity to play them at home. But right now, we don't have a visitor on the books. And then Cole Clower the following weekend when Arkansas football's on a bye week anyway. Look, most of the visits have gone down with no football game on campus. Probably a good thing, right? Caleb Holt, first one. Alabama A&M, and you knew that was going to be a big win. So, having said all that, I think if you could find a pathway, if the dominoes fall just right and it's a combination of players you want, you might expand it to 5, 3 or 4 otherwise. I think Arkansas is going to end up with 3 players that commit and sign early. The way it looks to me now, and I think they're in the lead again with Brandon McCoy Jr. I think they're in a lead or co-lead. I think we could still not sleeping on Dan Hurley and UConn, home state school with Abdou Toure, but that we might be close. Arkansas is close, and we've said this. We haven't changed on that. Providence in the mix there as well. Caleb Holt, again, I just went through that. Arkansas is still at the top up there. Air Fandion, they're right there with Houston. Maybe still playing from behind coming out of the weekend. It's just a lot to talk about, a lot of moving parts. But remember, even Mika Miernan, he took visits last year. I guess he could still take some and do his own timeline how he wants to do it. But his Arkansas visit was the favorite one. That was the direct source information that came back to me, a conversation he had with one of my sources. And that's what he said, better than the Michigan and Utah visit. I mean, Arkansas's got a lot of positives. So I fall back on this idea that even if they're not in the lead with some guys right now, or they're close to it, or maybe they're surpassing, at the end of the day, they casted a wide enough net, both front court and back court, where they're going to land on the 3 or 4 that annually Calipari says he wants to be at. And again, if you have to wait, let's say Brandon McCoy Jr. drags it out and wants to go to the spring. Again, I think Arkansas is not letting go just because they've got to have everybody done it in the early period. We just looked at the last recruiting cycle. Arkansas was still in it to win it for Nate Ament, who drug his out to the spring. So that will be true again for guys that hang out. Again, Jordan Smith Jr., until he changes his mind, that's the plan. Brandon McCoy Jr., I'm not sure that it won't get done early. But Arkansas right now, again, I think is the perceived leader there. And I'd say, pretty confidently that Abdou Toure, Arkansas's 1 or 1A up there with UConn. And again, something, he could end up at Providence. He took a visit there. They're in the top 3 of his final 7. And I think it's about, does Calipari want to go full throttle on him? And my feeling is that he does, because he's there to see him again. Remember, he took the unofficial visit to Arkansas again a year ago in October. So there's been a lot in that recruitment. And it's, not one of those, fly by night kind of situations. It's been a relationship building process spanning over a year. And so I think Arkansas is in great shape with some of these players, again, with J.J. Andrews already on board. All right, nearly 29 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We've run through all the visitors. Tate Kenny, again, I think Kansas is probably still the leader there. We'll see if Arkansas is able to figure out a way to and we'll also be keeping an eye on Calipari and all of his stops this week. Again, Toure, probably the Ratliff twins. Let's see who else he went to see. Remember, Assistant Chuck Martin, I broke this info last week. It was intel, maybe the last time we were on, was out to see Caleb Holt just a few days ago last week. So Arkansas hasn't let go of that rope, which keeps us in the same talking points partly. Recruiting it's a lot of moving pieces. Visit dates change. Sometimes they never happen. One day you think a team's in the lead and NIL gets bumped from somebody else, or some other player comes into the fold and shifts things because you're recruiting more than one, and you're trying to, sometimes your priorities shift a little bit. I think Jordan Smith Jr., it's been pretty clear to me he and J.J. Andrews, if I'm going back and tracking the arc of this recruiting cycle, to me those two have been at the top of the board. Those two have been at the top of the board, with others players absolute priorities and absolutely being up there too. I mean, Brandon McCoy Jr. is right there too. Caleb Holt, because of the momentum Arkansas got, right there too. The big man, Fandion, the number one center in the country. Calipari has not landed a front court player yet in terms of preferred upfront high school talent, and not something you're doing, not because you're waiting on a 5-star to decide in the spring, but you're backfilling the roster with more long-term development guys in the spring. So if you take that part out of the equation, he's yet to land a high-level front court guy. And we went through some of the names outside of Deanna who just visited. Again, Mika Miernan, Chase Foster, Baba Aladdin. There's more than one way to finish that. The Ratliff twins, let's see. I mean, Arkansas, if Calipari does go and see those guys, Chuck Martin 3 times since April, twice in the past couple of weeks. Brad Calipari's been out there, associate head coach. We reported this to you guys a few days ago, was out to see him. Now Calipari. The next thing will be offers. They don't hold them now, but I'm guessing Calipari's going to offer them, and we're going to see some offer announcements for both of those guys. And the next thing you know after that, it's probably visits being set up. He's not going to let offers go out without a visit being agreed to, and that's what they want to do and pursue. And those guys are now being recruited by Alabama. I think they just had a visit there or set one up. Texas or USC, Eric Patrick Melsman recently making offers. Florida's in the main. There are a lot of schools. Oklahoma State. There's a lot of high major schools getting in on the Ratliff twins at this time. All right, let's transition really quickly. We're going to keep this brief in terms of what's coming out of practice. It's some more intel for you. What I've heard lately. By the way, tomorrow, September 22nd, is the first day of full-blown expanded practice time. So I think you have 20 hours per week now to divide up between strength and conditioning and on-court practice time. Whereas you were limited to 8 hours per week for the same combination, strength and conditioning and on-court practice time. So you're going from limited stuff and you're ramping up to full-blown stuff as of tomorrow. And it's pretty timely to be doing that because you've got this prime time at the Palace, glorified scrimmage, dunk contest, introducing men's and women's teams. That's coming up in less than 2 weeks, Friday, October 3rd at Bud Walton Arena. Then your 12-day or that's on the 3rd. So 9 days later on the 12th on a Sunday, you're doing that tip-off tour scrimmage in Hot Springs at Banco's EK Arena. And then a couple of weeks later, you're hosting on a Friday night on October 24th, your first exhibition game against Cincinnati, charity exhibition. 3 days later on Monday, the 27th, you're playing Memphis on the road. And then bam, you open your regular season up a few days later on November 3rd at home against Southern. So everything's really fast tracking right now, and it's perfect timing because of the expectations of this team and where football's looking, what that's looking like right now. It is a perfect time to hand the baton over for this escalation of what we're going to start seeing with our own eyes with this team. But some more reports, the stuff we haven't seen. Now we've seen a few more videos come out, video highlights. We talk about a nasty dunk from Carter Knox in one of those, either the last time we were on or the time before. More photos have started to come out. But for folks that are inside the building, here are the names again that have stood out in the last couple of weeks as it's gotten back to me. We've kept you up to speed going all the way back to June when they were doing limited practices and it just moved on to campus. But the 4 names that stood out in the last couple of weeks were Nick Pringle, Carter Knox, again, Darius Acuff Jr., and DJ Wagner. So those 4 are your headliners again. So here's what was interesting. We said this. When we first started giving you feedback, it was Nick Pringle was standing out amongst the 3 big men, Trevor Brazile, Malik Ewan. And then it was Brazile took off. He won the summer, top player, got the number 1 overall vote when I did a top 5 Arkansas player, Hoop Hogs, from the June and July combined summer work before they took a month off and then came back for the start of the fall semester. Then when they got back, the first couple of reports we got were that Malik Ewan had become just really hard to deal with because of his offensive stuff and really figuring things out in terms of incorporating some three-point shooting and other things that we saw glimpses of when we were in the building for an hour of practice as media in July. So Malik Ewan took the torch for the front line, The last time we talked about it and gave you feedback a couple of weeks ago, it went back to Nick Pringle and the fact that he was becoming more and more of a force with his defensive versatility, and then just finishing off those lob passes, offensive rebounds, just really grinding and playing to his strengths. And that was the last report we gave you in that kind of musical chairs of who's standing out on the front line. And again, it's Nick Pringle as we come back to you now, since it's been a week or two since we talked about that. And so it was interesting to see John Rothstein put out a tweet over the weekend, and maybe it was today, that he's got planted moles in the Fayetteville. That's his stick, telling that Nick Pringle's really showing off and showing out and playing well. Goes in line with what we've been talking about and what we're talking about again. So it coincides with what was shared with me. Carter Knox, remember the last 2 weeks of spring and summer, he got back later than everybody else because he was going through the NBA draft. And then he was getting his sea legs, acclimating with some of the newcomers. When we were in there for that hour-long practice, it wasn't that he did anything wrong necessarily. He did fine, but he didn't just jump out as, oh, this is the dude. That was kind of Trevor in Brazil that day, and what we've been hearing again consistently. But if you remember, they still had another week to go. I think they wrapped up on July 16th, so a day after we had left and been in there. And then I had a source who'd been in there just about daily saying, look, when you combine this last week with the week leading up to when media was invited in the last 2 weeks, Carter Knox was probably the best player in the building. And, even including Brazil, who gets the overall because you count all of June and July when we did that top 5. But that Knox had really come on and probably was the best player out there and was consistently knocking down threes, just being a force at both ends. And so you're hearing more and more in that again as Arkansas, it's been over a month now. They've been back on campus since the start of fall practice. And again, it ramps back up to the full-blown thing starting tomorrow. But Carter Knox is one that's really, really putting, kind of maybe backing up this notion that he can end up being a one and done and be a first-round draft pick projection, because he's getting those already. But he's got to go out and have the kind of season that maintains that, if not improves on it, and gets him, a lot of the projections now you see are in the low 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. Maybe there's a pathway for him to have the kind of season that would get him in the teens. Dare I say back in lottery or something like that. I can't rule out anything. I don't necessarily think I see a path unless he just dominates all of college basketball for like a top 5 pick or something like that. But again, the reports are really good on those guys. And then this Darius Acup Jr. continuing to show the ability to understand his role as the lead guard, making plays both as a scorer, facilitator, and just DJ Wagner, the defensive toughness, and just his veteran qualities, not only as a leader, but leading by example and making plays at impact winning. It's just showing up more and more in practice. The only thing I will leave you with now is we are still on watch. Does the media, Calipari talked about bringing the media back in September. Well, we're running out of September dates. The staff's on the road a lot. We'll see if they do that. But I will be in the building on October 3rd is the plan anyway for that primetime in the Palace, in which case some of that will be scrimmage. And so at minimum, fans will be able to get in there too on that night. And we'll see how many file into Bud Walton Arena. That will be interesting. Until next time, I appreciate everybody. If something breaks tonight that I need to jump back in here and do, I will do. If not, it'll probably be sometime tomorrow. Until then, thanks for being here. Hope you had a great weekend, all things considered. Hope it turned around for you today. Until next time, we'll see you soon.